Hello, everyone. You can call me Raffi. I hope our story is something you'll find interesting. It happened when my sister and I stayed in an old house in Batangas, just the two of us. It was terrifying, and even now I still get chills remembering it. My only sibling is my older sister, Rena. We lost our mother early, back when I was in elementary school. Our father remarried, and our stepmother turned out to be the classic villain in our lives. It was like a movie. She mistreated us, made us work in exchange for food. That's what alil kanin means. Do all the housework or don't eat. We had nowhere else to go. Our relatives, both on our mom's and dad's side, lived far away. Plus, we were still kids, so we just endured it. When Papa died, I was in high school, just about to graduate, but I had to stop studying because our stepmom refused to support us. Thankfully, my sister finished high school before he passed. One of my teachers offered to support me for my last year, but when our stepmom kicked us out, I lost the will to continue school. Still, that same teacher helped us find a place to stay. She gave us an address in Santor, Batangas, and some money to get started. Such a kind woman. Our first time going there, Ate and I got lost. We wandered around before finally finding the place just before dark. We saw an old woman sweeping the yard. Her fence was made of thick, leafy plants. Ate introduced herself and asked if it was the place we were looking for. The old woman smiled and nodded. Let's call her Monet. She turned out to be the aunt of my teacher. She let us stay in her house that night and explained that we wouldn't have to pay rent until Ate found a job. My sister was 18 and planned to work in the area or nearby barangays. After feeding us dinner, Mane walked us to the house we would stay in. It wasn't far, but it was deep in the woods. We were surprised. It wasn't a small house like we thought. It was quite big, even 2 stories made of sturdy wood. Inside was spacious. I didn't know if it was really big or just seemed that way since we had no furniture. Still, something about the place made me uneasy. There were jalousie windows, a small table with 2 wooden chairs, a faucet in the kitchen and bathroom, and 2 empty rooms upstairs. It looked comfortable, but I couldn't shake my nervous feeling. Monet told us she de-cleaned it a bit and would help us fix up the rest tomorrow. Then she left. 8 said the 2 bedrooms were perfect, 1 each for us. We were thrilled because back at Papa's house, we didn't even have our own rooms. We used to sleep on the living room floor while everyone else had their beds. Ate reassured me that she'd do everything to give us a good life. Once she got a job, she'd start buying what we needed little by little. She reminded me that from now on, we only had each other. I was happy it was just the 2 of us. At least we weren't being treated like servants anymore. No more yelling, no more people telling us what to do, and no more abuse. That night, we were talking about our past when we heard a loud thud downstairs. We both froze. 8 asked if I locked the door. I said yes. She got up to check, and I followed. We didn't see anything that could have caused the noise. 1 window was open, so my sister thought maybe a cat came in and jumped down. We searched the corners, the kitchen, and the bathroom, but found nothing. I was starting to get scared. 8 noticed and told me to go back upstairs. I wanted to keep talking to her to calm down, but she insisted we get some rest. We had to wake up early to repair parts of the house. She thought maybe a cat had slipped in through the kitchen or terrace. We did notice the house had a small balcony and an old rocking chair that Monet said was left behind by the last tenant. I lay down in my room with a blanket and pillow. The floor was bare, but I didn't mind. At least there was no one to yell at or hurt us. But I couldn't sleep, especially thinking about the sound we heard. My imagination ran wild, especially since I loved horror even as a kid. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the chirping of crickets. Just when I was starting to doze off, another loud thud came from downstairs. I checked the watch Papa gave me when I was a child. It was 2 a.m. I was going to wake my sister, but she was fast asleep, mouth open. She was probably exhausted from the trip. I didn't want to bother her, so I went back to my room. Our rooms had no doors, just curtains. I was too scared to check what made the noise. I just pulled the blanket over my head. The next morning, My sister woke me up so we could buy bread for breakfast. Before we left, she locked the door and put the key in her pocket. When we returned, the lock was gone. We froze. 8 asked if maybe she forgot to lock it. I said, no. I clearly saw her lock it and pocket the key. She took a deep breath and guessed maybe Monet came in to do repairs. She started to enter, but I stopped her and grabbed a piece of wood just in case an intruder was inside. We checked inside, nervous. Then Monet appeared behind us and greeted us good morning. Ete asked if she had opened the door. Monet said she had just arrived, woke up late, and stayed up sewing the night before. She asked where we had gone and suggested maybe we forgot to lock the door. I insisted we did. She told us to let it go and help each other repair the broken parts of the kitchen and balcony instead of hiring someone. While working, I asked Monet if the house was haunted. She laughed and said thinking that way invites bad spirits. My sister asked when the last tenant left and why. Monet said it was a while ago but didn't say why. She just told us not to worry. There were no ghosts. I was about to say something, but my sister pinched me on the waist and whispered for me not to speak anymore. That same day, we covered the holes in the kitchen and the balcony. Around 7 p.m., Ate, Rina, and I were eating dinner. It was just rice and egg. But it felt so good to eat without anyone staring at you or counting how many spoonfuls you've had. Then suddenly we heard the water running from the bathroom faucet. 8 and I looked at each other again. She was the first to stand up to check the bathroom. My sister is really brave. I just followed her. We were shocked because the faucet was indeed open. Ate said, maybe it's just broken. Maybe it had loosened and turned on by itself. She tightened the handle. But I couldn't help thinking something else. First, we'd heard 2 loud thuds downstairs when no one was there. Second, that door had opened, even though I was sure Ate locked it before we left. And now the bathroom faucet suddenly turned on. The thought was slowly forming in my mind. There was a ghost in that house. My sister called me back to eat. She told me not to overthink the faucet, saying maybe there was just something wrong with it and that she'd ask Monet to have it replaced the next day. But then, out of nowhere, the sink faucet also turned on. 8 and I both jumped in shock and clung to each other. I asked her if that one was broken too, but she didn't answer. She just turned it off quickly. We sat back down to eat, but didn't wash the dishes anymore. We just went upstairs. I was really scared, so I asked Ate if I could sleep in her room. She agreed, probably because she was scared too, but didn't want to show it. We talked about what had been happening in the house. I said, what if we just left and found somewhere else to live? 8 thought about it, then said we couldn't. Not yet. Maybe someday when we could afford to. For now, we had a roof over our heads, and that was enough to be thankful for. She reminded me how much we owed our teacher and Monet, who helped us find this house. She also said ghosts couldn't actually kill people. Maybe they just wanted to make their presence known. I asked, what if one actually shows itself to us? 8 explained that only people with a third eye could see ghosts, and we didn't have that. So we just needed to pray every day and every night. I suggested we ask Monet to have the house blessed, just in case. But Ade said that might offend her, like we were accusing her of renting out a haunted place. That made sense, so I didn't bring it up again. Ate always knew how to protect us. Later on, Monet helped Ate find work. She referred her to someone in the market who needed a vendor. It was a temporary job, but enough for us to get by. Ate accepted it, which meant I'd be alone at home in the mornings until she returned in the afternoon. The thought of being left alone terrified me. I couldn't help but imagine what that ghost might do to me. I was such a scaredy cat when it came to anything paranormal. On Ate's first day of work, I went out too, because I didn't want to stay home alone. I wanted to go with her, but Monet said maybe later, if they needed an extra helper. The neighborhood was quiet, and I eventually got bored outside, so I came back and sat on the rocking chair on the balcony. Before I knew it, I had dozed off. Then I felt something or someone pass in front of me. You know that feeling? Even with your eyes closed, you just know someone is right in front of you. I felt it, and the light shifted slightly. It felt like the presence went inside the house. I checked the time, but it was still early. Too early for Ate to be home. I called out to her just in case. No answer. I checked every room. She wasn't there. Then, when I looked up at the window, I saw a shadow. It looked like a man. My heart pounded. The shadow looked exactly like a person. I panicked and rushed downstairs, thinking it might be a thief. But when I got to the stairs, I froze. How could a person cast a shadow upstairs when there was nothing nearby to climb from? I started to shake. What if it wasn't a person at all? Still, I forced myself to check the back of the house, holding a kitchen knife. I walked around and confirmed it. There was no way anyone could have climbed up there. I closed my eyes tight and ran back inside. I didn't even lock the door. I was just too scared. When Aterina got home, I wanted to tell her everything, but she looked so tired. All she said was she wanted to sleep. So I didn't say anything. I cooked rice and sautéed sardines for dinner. While waiting for the rice, I sat in the rocking chair again. But the moment I sat down, I jumped up immediately. It felt like I had sat on someone. I swear I felt the shape of a human body, like I was sitting on a person. But no one was there. I ran back inside and locked the door. During dinner, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told Ate everything. She told me to stay strong. Then she pulled out a rosary from her pocket and handed it to me. She said I should always carry it. It would protect me from ghosts and evil spirits. I tried to give it back. I asked, "What about you?" We only had one rosary, and I didn't want her to be unprotected. But she said it was fine. She was at the market all day, and I was the one who stayed home. I needed it more. So I accepted the rosary. Ate insisted. She knew I was terrified, even though I often watched horror shows. That night, Ate fell asleep quickly. I, on the other hand, was still wide awake. I tried counting stars in my head, imagining sheep jumping over a fence, anything to make me sleepy. But it didn't work. Then I heard footsteps. Someone was coming up the stairs. If it were Ate, I would have heard her get out of bed. I stood up but didn't leave the room. I just listened. The steps continued. If it were a real person, the footsteps would have stopped when they reached the top, but they didn't. They just kept going. I remembered the rosary and quickly reached for it in my pocket, gripping it tightly. I slowly opened the door and peeked inside Ate's room. She was still sleeping. I slowly walked toward the staircase, rosary in hand, tightly gripped. The footsteps had stopped. I peeked down the stairs but saw nothing. No movement, no shadows. Still, I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone or something had made its way up. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I went back to Ate's room and lay beside her, trembling. I didn't want to wake her. She was so tired, but I couldn't sleep. So I just closed my eyes and silently recited prayers over and over, hoping it would keep me safe until morning. The next few days were quiet. Nothing strange happened while Ate was out working. Maybe the rosary really was protecting me. But one afternoon, while I was folding our clothes, I heard tapping on the window upstairs. I froze. We didn't have trees near that window. I slowly walked to the bottom of the stairs and listened. The tapping continued. It was soft, steady, deliberate. I took a deep breath, held the rosary in my pocket, and climbed the stairs. Step by step, the sound got louder, closer. When I reached the top and turned the corner toward the window, it suddenly stopped. No one was there. I checked outside. Nothing. I didn't mention it to Ate when she got home. She looked too happy. She had just been told her temporary job might become permanent. I didn't want to spoil her mood with my stories. But I couldn't hide the fear in my eyes. She noticed and asked if something happened. I said, "It tapped on the window today." Ate's face turned serious, but she stayed calm. She said it might be the wind, or maybe a bird. I knew she didn't really believe that, but she didn't want me to be more afraid. She told me to keep praying, to never let go of the rosary, and to remember that fear gave these things more power. So that night, I made sure to pray longer. I even put the rosary under my pillow just in case. I tried to sleep earlier, thinking that maybe if I was asleep before anything strange happened, I wouldn't have to deal with it. But around midnight, I woke up needing to go to the bathroom. I tiptoed to the door, trying not to wake Ate. The hallway was dark, and the light switch was near the stairs. I hesitated. Then I heard it again, the faint sound of footsteps on the stairs. I held my breath. It was slow, dragging, as if whoever or whatever it was wasn't in a hurry. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen. I clutched the rosary again and whispered a prayer. I stood there in the dark, praying with all my heart that it would go away. Then silence. I finally gathered enough courage to run to the bathroom, lock the door, and stay there until morning light started seeping through the windows. That morning, Ate noticed the look on my face and hugged me without asking anything. I think she knew. She just didn't want to talk about it. That very same day, Ate and I decided to leave the house. Even though we didn't have a clear plan of where to go, we knew we couldn't stay there any longer. The fear had built up too much. It wasn't just about the noises or shadows anymore. It was the heavy feeling that we were never alone, that something unseen was always watching us. A few days later, we returned only to pack our belongings. Mane offered to help us find a new place. Thankfully, we found a small room for rent in a different barangay. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Just 4 walls and a roof we could feel safe under. We didn't own many things, so moving out wasn't hard. Even after we left, the memories of that house stayed with us. I never forgot the footsteps, the shadow in the window, the faucet that turned on by itself, or the feeling of sitting on the rocking chair and sensing that someone invisible was already there. After that, I never sat in a rocking chair again. I always made sure to carry the rosary Ate gave me, no matter where I went. It became more than just protection. It was a reminder that we made it through. Ate became more prayerful too. She even started lighting candles every night. She said it helped her sleep. I didn't know if it really kept spirits away, but somehow it made us both feel safer. And even though we were no longer in that house, I would still sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, thinking I had heard those same slow footsteps. Sometimes, even now, years later, I still dream of that rocking chair, creaking slowly on its own. And every time I do, I wake up gripping the rosary tightly in my hand. But I thank God that nothing worse happened to us back then, that we were able to leave that house before it was too late,